Peacemaker Season 2 was the final release in the first year of the DCU following Creature Commandos and Superman. Both of those projects gave us a lot of information about this weird, half-soft, half-hard reboot from the DCEU that has had a bit of confusing canon and timeline, but endless potential for world building. Throughout the 2 months of Peacemaker Season 2, I made weekly videos, in each one of which I reviewed the episode, but also in each episode I went over everything we learned about the DCU. This is the culmination of that, piling together everything we learned and arranging it into several different categories. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and become a member in the Noble tier above for early access to videos, or the King tier for a special shout out. Thanks to these members for the extra support. Let's start where the show started, the canon. The Peacemaker podcast already confirmed quite a bit about what is and isn't canon from Season 1, something I talked about in this video here. Here though, we are focusing on Peacemaker Season 2 specifically, and this season officially brought back the following DCEU characters and castings. Vigilante and Judo Master previously appeared actorless in cameos in Creature Commandos. This season makes the castings of Freddie Stroma and Nut Lee respectively canon. There's also Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt, D. Bradley Baker as Eagly, Robert Patrick as White Dragon, Clark Jerome Wilson as Dave, Rizwan Manji as Jamil, Elizabeth Ludlow as Kia Adebayo, Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag, now known as Rick Flag Jr., and Lachlan Monroe as Larry Fitzgibbon. The season also mentions or references the likes of Gut Chase, Sophie Song, The Enchantress, Kite Man, and The Flash. Those last two come from the Previously On segment. We see most of the important events in the Previously On segment, but what we don't see is Clemson Murn, basically because Gunn wants the actor to return in a different role. Speaking of, it's the biggest and most clear indicator of the canon of the DCU. In the very first moment, we see Peacemaker talking to a class, mentioning Kite Man, and one kid is wearing a Flash shirt. The issue with this is that this scene, which included a direct mention to the Flash, not just the logo, was actually talked about in the Peacemaker podcast, and Gunn specifically said he does not know whether or not the Flash had debuted there yet. It could have ended there. We could have assumed the scene happened similarly but slightly differently. The Flash just wasn't mentioned and the girl didn't wear that shirt. But because this scene was now included in the Previously On segment in Season 2, that means that this scene is canon. There is now a canon scene where a girl is wearing a shirt with a Flash logo. So either the Flash exists, or when he does debut, he'll directly copy his logo from somewhere else, which would be kind of lame. This might have been an oversight on Gunn's part, but I think he should just go with it and make it so that this was Barry's logo, and that Barry, as the Flash, was either in Hal's generation of heroism or simply active before Peacemaker Season 1 in 2023. Instead of a Green Arrow reference from the finale, a deleted scene from Season 1 referencing Green Lantern was added back in, retroactively making this a reference to actually the Guy Gardner Green Lantern. Guy also references what Chris says, meaning they might have actually met. As someone, they don't know whether or not they debuted yet, so the reference to Green Arrow in the finale of Peacemaker Season 1 might not be canon. Instead of Leota asking her mom to call the Justice League, she says Justice Gang, and who were to show up but the Justice Gang, but also Superman and Supergirl. Nathan Fillion and Isabella Merced replaced Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller as the actual non-silhouette cameos in the scene. This also means that Waller has some sort of connection to the Justice Gang or some sort of influence over people who do. Or at least she did when she was Argus director. Later on, the canon is further expanded as we learn that immediately before the events of the DCU version of the Suicide Squad, Rick Flag Jr. and Amelia Harcourt, who were apparently good friends, slept together, and that is the reason why Harcourt hated Peacemaker at the beginning of the series, which kind of retroactively makes that canon to the DCEU, since James Gunn has mentioned this has been a part of the plan since the very beginning. Speaking of the DCEU, they also reference Suicide Squad, the 2016 movie. Relatively recently, James Gunn added Suicide Squad to the list of the loose canon movies. We just didn't know how or why. I think it's specifically because of this scene, and only this scene. Flag has a very powerful sorceress girlfriend that he's cheating on, June Moon, aka the Enchantress. If we ever see her one day, I don't think she'll be played by Cara Delevingne, nor do I think they'll use the same design. I doubt much if anything else from Suicide Squad is canon. June was actually cured at the end of Suicide Squad, Squad, but is hinted to still be prone to her darker side by the events of the Suicide Squad, meaning not even the entirety of June's story in the original Suicide Squad is canon. I do not think this movie should be considered a part of the loose canon of the DCU. It just so happens that Rick Flag of the DCU also dated the Enchantress. We are also introduced to Red St. Wild, who's played by Michael Rooker. This casting makes it clear that the casting of Savant in the Suicide Squad is not canon. And finally, up until episode 5 of this season and in Creature Commandos, they only ever mention Project Starfish. Here they reference a giant starfish, confirming beyond the shadow of a doubt what Project Starfish was about, the same thing as what it was in the Suicide Squad. So that's it for the canon. There are still things about the canon that are up in the air, but much of it is now a lot clearer than before. Then there is the timeline, which got pretty confusing pretty quickly, but I think it all fits together. In timeline order, we learned that Augie Smith found the QUC in 1990. Rick Flag and Harcourt slept together. The DCU version of the Suicide Squad occurred, including Chris killing Flag, and then also Flag's funeral happened, all in 2022. Peacemaker Season 1 happened in 2023. Creature Commandos Season 1 occurred in 2024. Flag became Argus Director in November 2024. Peacemaker found Earth 2 in January 2025. Superman and also the Nelson concert occurred in May 2025. Peacemaker Season 2 occurs in July 2025 and then might have bled into August, considering it seems like at least 2 or 3 weeks passed during this season. How I got to all these conclusions about the timeline, I'm going to make a timeline specific video. More vague additions to the timeline is that Supergirl, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and the Justice Gang as a group all debuted at some point before the events of the finale of Peacemaker, which was in 2023. The Justice Gang were also around long enough by then to be known by Leota Adebayo. So the timeline has been built, but what about the world? Well, while I don't think there's nearly as much as the previous 2 entries in the DCU, the world building certainly exists. I think the main reason why it feels to me like there's less world building here is that the other 2 projects introduced a lot more DC characters. If you don't count returning characters, this season really didn't introduce many. All things considered, this season introduces only 3 or 4 actual DC characters, and most of them have some sort of caveat. Caveats like Jaina Hudson, aka the White Rabbit, a minor Batman villain who makes her DCU debut played by Brie Noelle, but it's only a very brief cameo. The Rainbow Creature is pictured and Ultra Humanite is mentioned, but both are only on Earth 2, and also it's just a picture and just a mention. This might mean that they do exist, or did exist, or will exist on Earth 1, but not necessarily. The Rainbow Creature is a very minor Batman villain from the Silver Age, while the Ultra Humanite is a more major JSA villain and also the first supervillain that Superman ever fought back in the 1930s. Earth 2 Keith Smith's alter ego ends up being Captain Triumph, the name of the Golden Age hero named Lance Gallant. This is kind of an adaptation. It kind of sounds like it's the same situation as Augie Smith and White Dragon, but not really, because not only did they change his actual name, but they are nothing alike. They don't have any same origin story elements, they don't have the same suits, they don't have the same real name. The only similarity is the alter ego, as opposed to the White Dragon, who is a lot more similar to his technically unrelated comic book counterpart. They're both neo-Nazis, they wear the same suits. I personally would consider the White Dragon to be an adaptation of the White Dragon, but Captain Triumph, I do not think this is an adaptation of Lance Gallant, aka Captain Triumph. The one big, newly introduced in full capacity and fully used beyond just a cameo character is Sol Rodriguez as Sasha Bordeaux, a cyborg former Argus agent and now founder of Checkmate. In the comics, she's a prominent member of Checkmate, but also at one point a bodyguard of Bruce Wayne. Maybe Checkmate will be hired by Wayne Enterprises, and maybe she will work for Wayne at some point. The season did, however, introduce a good amount of original characters like Red St. Wild, Langston Fleury, all the other Argus agents, the imps from the Candyland dimension, the zombies from the zombie dimension, the alien and his rats that he throws out, and the alien who Augie got the QUC from, all of which is original as far as we can tell, more so, I think, than newly introduced DC characters. But more so than character introductions, the world building comes from, well, the actual world. Not just that, but the entire multiverse. This season confirms the existence of the DCU multiverse, accessible through the QUC. The dimensions include Earth 2, which is actually Earth X, Candyland full of sexually devious violent imps, a black hole dimension that Lex Luthor is interested in, Skull Spider Dimension, Zombie Dimension, and Salvation, an inhabited dimension the US government thinks is uninhabited and will be used as a metahuman prison as a way to expel them from Earth. Salvation comes from a comic called Salvation Run, in which it was used for the same purpose. Amanda Waller and Rick Flag, with Checkmate, sent all of Earth's greatest criminals through a boom tube to another planet, so in the comics it was not another dimension but another planet. It was soon revealed that when Checkmate checked this planet, they didn't find anything, but that was actually because what was there was being hidden by the controllers of this planet, Darkseid, Desaad, and Apocalypse. This story was a part of the Countdown to Final Crisis, in which Darkseid was the main villain, and all of the villains on this planet were formed together under a group called the Secret Society of Supervillains, led by a villain named Libra. So it can be that this chapter is leading into Libra, Darkseid, the Secret Society of Supervillains, or maybe it's just Salvation. Salvation will go on to have a large role in the DCU, including Man of Tomorrow, Creature Commandos Season 2, and many others. It is a part of the overarching plot of Chapter 1. We learn that the Justice Gang are openly recruiting heroes after the events of Superman, where they recruited their first new recruit, Metamorpho, alongside Nathan and Isabella. Sean Gunn also cameos, again as Maxwell Lord. Peacemaker is rejected, but with them recruiting, it's likely they'll add some members before or during their next appearance. Arkham Asylum is referenced more than once, confirming its existence, but also it's used as a way to justify the fact that Salvation is needed, because Arkham Asylum alongside Belle Reve cannot hold metahumans. Van Cole Prison is also referenced, confirming its existence. Lex Luthor is moved there after he and Flag strike a deal, events that directly set up Man of Tomorrow. Van Cole Prison, unlike Belle Reve, does not have metahumans. It's considered a lesser prison compared to Belle Reve. Apparently, there are metas in Belle Reve described as a bear-sized man with dragon skin, maybe Killer Croc, and a glowing twink with cartoon eyes, no clue. Spider-Man, the Spider-Man cartoon, and the pointing meme from the cartoon are all referenced, confirming their existences in both Earth 1 and Earth 2. Ghost Rider was referenced in Creature Commandos, so clearly Marvel exists as a fictional universe in the DCU. The same goes for Pokemon. This season references Bulbasaur, Infernape, and just Pokemon in general. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon references. It makes me think maybe James Gunn got into Pokemon while writing the season, since I don't think any of his previous works, as far as I can remember, ever referenced Pokemon before, but this season references Pokemon in 4 separate episodes. Also, just so happens, Infernape has always been my favorite Pokemon ever since I witnessed Absolute Peak as a kid. Vigilante knows what's up. Checkmate is formed by Leota Adebayo, Peacemaker, Vigilante, Amelia Harcourt, Johnny Condamos, Eagly, Judo Master, Sasha Bordeaux, and Langston Fleury, but for the foreseeable future, Peacemaker has been disappeared. The bands Nelson and Foxy Shazam exist in the DCU. Foxy Shazam is interesting because their name has Shazam in it. What will that mean for the character Shazam going forward when he's introduced? Will they sue him? Will he go by the Captain or Captain Marvel? Maybe he already debuted a long time ago and they got their name from him, which I think is true in the real world. As previously mentioned, it was revealed that Augie found the QUC. This was revealed that confirmed he didn't create it. It was created by aliens. It was also revealed that he isn't in fact a genius at all. He didn't create the QUC, he didn't create the Peacemaker helmets, and flunked out of 10th grade. And now I'm thinking, how could somebody like that also have created the White Dragon suit? Gunn said he has an idea about the helmets, but at the same time, he also said he has no plans for Peacemaker Season 3, so who knows if we'll ever find out. The season also reveals that Judo Master's name is Rip Jagger, which we didn't know previously in the DCEU. Eagly is revealed to be the Prime Eagle, and according to Gunn, is the most powerful member of the 11th Street Kids, which I think is still likely true with Checkmates. It's only Sasha Bordeaux who really puts up a fight, but Eagly is probably more powerful since he taps into some sort of energy force that Red Saint Wild is also able to tap into. I thought it might be the Red, the energy force behind animals used by heroes like Animal Man, Vixen, Beast Boy, and Bwana/Freedom Beast who exist in the DCU. This isn't confirmed, but would make a lot of sense. Like how this season brought back a number of characters from the DCEU, it also had a lot of universe interconnectivity, with the following characters returning from the last 2 projects. Included in this are Rick Flag Sr., Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, Superman, Supergirl, Maxwell Lord, Clevis Thorne-White, Lex Luthor, Sidney Happerson, Amanda McCoy, Ali Jessup, Otis Berg, and Stephen Morey. There are also Earth 2 versions of several characters, which brings me to the final category, Earth 2. The characters with Earth 2 counterparts include Augie Smith, Keith Smith, Peacemaker, Amelia Harcourt, Rick Flag Jr., Vigilante, Mr. and Mrs. Chase, Larry Fitzgibbon, the Kaiju from Superman, and you might have missed this one, but Wildcat. They mention an elderly Mr. Grant. Gunn confirmed this to be Wildcat, who, on Earth 1, is also seen on the mural. Typically, Earth 2 is the JSA world. In the New 52, it was a world ravaged by Darkseid with the Wonders of the World as the main heroes, while in the Arrowverse, evil counterpart world. This is none of that. We learn that Earth 2 is actually not really Earth 2, it's Earth X, a world where the Nazis won World War II and eventually took over the United States of America. The only heroes from this world that we know about were two groups. There was the top trio, which consists of Peacemaker, Blue Dragon, and Captain Triumph, but two of them are dead, leaving just Captain Triumph alive. There's also the Sons of Liberty, who are adapted on Earth X as anti-Nazi freedom fighter terrorists. This likely means that they won't exist on Earth 1. Vigilante is one of the members. Anything else I already mentioned, which brings this video to an end. That's everything we learned about the DCU from Peacemaker Season 2. Next stop is Lanterns.